So the angelic beings that people are actually connecting with are actually not really angels. And so this has been interesting for me because I have worked with angels a lot on my healing journey. Now I'm questioning, what the hell was that?
If you live in a fear space, you often attract experiences with beings who know how to manipulate and control that kind of energy of the fear. They just think, oh, the Anunnaki are bad. I'm like, they're not bad. You have a group of beings, a small sect of them broke off, decided to do some horrible things, and then now we vilify them when in fact a lot of them are actually really good. Same in reptilians. There's a lot of reptilian stuff out there that you have a small group of beings that did a lot of bad stuff, and I've met bad ones. I've had a few experiences there, and I've had the majority of experiences are beautiful, loving, balanced type where they're in a better expression.
Have you ever seen Earth from above? And what do you think? Is it flat? Is it round?
What I would ask people is to stop creating limitations around their experience and to become more observational and to understand that different shapes are different dimensional experiences.
Welcome back to the Kotodama Podcast. I'm so excited. My guest today is Willow Shire, and Willow is actually a spiritual artist. He is an ET ambassador and he's a conscious guide. So he does a lot of videos and reels on social media and helps people awaken. Welcome to the show, Willow.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here.
So first of all, can we already start with changing your name? Because if you're open to talk about this, because I know your birth name is different than the name that you have now. And I recently thought about this because I'm going to marry soon and I will change my name. And I have heard a lot about, how that changes your whole destiny, I guess, and your energy. Can you talk a bit about that?
Oh yeah. So my original name is Nicholas, my human name. I call it my human name and my spirit name. Now, when it comes to changing my name, I didn't change it in the sense of like a legal human way. I went through a spiritual awakening. I was trying to figure out how to separate my day-to-day work from my spiritual work. So I did web development. I was a web developing freelancer, and I had built clientele and a lot of relationships where if I came out and said, hey, I'm talking to extraterrestrials and Sasquatches, I might lose my clientele overnight. So I was trying to figure out, how do I safely experience this transition of writing books, talking on social media, but also not being like readily apparent to the business world with what I was doing. And I went through a lot of inner work dealing with what names would be resonant for me. And ultimately, I settled on Willow Shire, and I didn't necessarily settle on it. I was working with Sasquatches, and Sasquatches are big, giant humanoids, very hairy. Essentially, if humans were left to evolve, we would have turned into them in some way. And very gentle beings. And I was going into the mountains, meeting with them, going up there, building trust, developing more relationships with other beings. And I remember one of them coming up, sitting by a fire, and for some reason we were having some sort of conversation, and I was looking at the moon, and she said, "What's your name?" And without thinking, without missing a beat, I said Willow Shire, and I went, "Wait a second, that's not my name. My name is Nicholas Rhodes, like my human name." And she goes, "No, that's your name now, Willow Shire, your spiritual name, the name you're embracing to move forward." And so for me, changing my name in that sense of just having people call me that, giving me safety in the work that I did, it accelerated me forward on my path of authenticity to be able to embrace more of what I was doing, also providing me some safety in the human world, the 3D world. But ultimately, it really is who I am. It was uh, an alignment of sounds that really described who I was more energetically. And now I'm in this space where uh, embracing the human more. There's like two sides of it. There's the more spiritual, authentic version, and then the human playing on Earth type of experience. And so my guides are like, you've done the work. I've exited my old freelancing job. I'm doing this full time. And they're like, now be more of the human when you're out there. And so it's interesting how now when I meet people, I'm like, oh, I'm Nick. But for the most part, I have people call me Will or Willow. And there's an energy alignment. It does change the energy. It brings energy into you. Uh, for me, it just helped with things like suppression, things like being more open, being more authentic, feeling safer, uh, feeling more myself. My name never, my whole life, my human name never really felt entirely like me. And Willow Shire feels more like me. Um, I'm not sure how that will play with, when you said changing your name, like, in a partner way, that changes the energy too. I don't know if it'll be the same experience or not, but for me, it was very, uh, it was a life change. It was a moment of realizing, wow, I can be this different person. I don't have to be the person I was my whole life that people told me I was. I can literally just become this person I've always wanted to be.
Wow, yeah, that's a different type of experience, I guess, because you chose your name or it came to you, I guess, and it's a spiritual experience that's still different than, when people marry and they change their names. But at the same time, I do think it's all meant to be in a way as well, because, you know, for example, my name actually means my full name actually means my soul, your essence. So it's this very actually etheric kind of, I don't know, name, I guess. But my last name never really resonated with me much for some reason. So, and even my first name, Janem, which means my soul, when I'm in Japan, for example, a lot of people call me Jane. So they kind of, or I eliminate or they eliminate the last M. And so again, I feel like I'm different here. And then I don't know, I feel like it's some sort of finding oneself and shifting through, I don't know, different parts of myself as well. And I think
Yeah.
that's really interesting what you just said. But I need to ask you, wait, so Sasquatch, right? That's been coming up so much lately in me, for like me before this podcast and everything. I never had any interest in the Sasquatch, but I had a guest on. Her name is Laurie Williams, and she is a controlled remote viewing specialist and expert and teacher. And she talked about how she channeled for the first time the Sasquatch back in the day. And she was surprised by how gentle and beautiful and like, I guess, awakened this being was. And, it's a time traveling, interdimensional being. And exactly as you said, I also, follow and love Bashar's teachings. And he says how that's exactly what we would have ended up being if the, Anunnaki didn't play with our DNA. We would have all been like a Sasquatch or Bigfoot. Or is it actually the same thing? I'm not sure. But can you
Yeah.
tell me, you met them like physically, and how did they? Can you tell me a little bit about that experience? That's crazy.
Yeah. I have a lot of experience with them. I'm very strongly tied to them. They were one of my first extraterrestrial teachers that showed up. I've met a lot of ETs, but they were really the ones that I went deep into the wilderness. Um, I did a lot of fear work. I wasn't allowed to, and my guys are saying before I continue, that Bigfoot and Sasquatch are the same. So like the words Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, Yowie is in Australia. There are different words around the world, but they're all like the same being, just different in location type of thing. Um, and I was going into the mountains working on fear. I had always known they were benevolent. There's a lot of stories of fear, but this what happens is fearful stories sell. So people go on talking about like be careful in the woods and all of these things because the fearful stories sell. Whereas if I say, hey, I went to a lake and I sat on a rock and a Sasquatch came out and sat by me and we had a conversation, that loses people's attention very quickly versus something chasing them through the woods or that type of thing. So with my experience, they were having me deal with the fear and the aspect of no fire, no flashlights or lights of any kind, no weapons of any kind, going into the wilderness, miles away from people, and just trusting I was going to be okay, and sitting on rocks and camping and being fine. They helped me build that so I could meet other ETs, because you have to clear fear energy and be okay in that space to be safe, so that there's not a reaction. And for me, it was, I have a lot of physical experiences, but they are a higher dimensional, often just shifted out of our light spectrum. So most people can't see them. They'll be around and you won't even see them. And for a long time, I would think like, am I really doing, is this real? I had one that, we were having a telepathic conversation in the mountains. I was inside my tent. We were talking. I call him Mike. A lot of them have names in America that are very indigenous, and so they have these long um, uh, names more related to like Native American culture. And they'll give me the name, and it's like something I can't remember because it's way too long. So I use like American human names, and I'll just go, "Hey, Mike, how are you doing?" And we're talking telepathically, and I start going, I don't, is this really happening? Am I really experiencing this? And I hear him laugh, and outside the tent I hear three steps appear, three big steps, boom, boom, boom. And then he beats on the tent and just beats the side of the tent in, the walls moving in. And then he rushes off one, two, three steps and disappears. And you don't hear the footsteps. He shifted in physically, like brought his density down more, shifted in, did that, and shifted out. And he's laughing the whole time. Luckily, at that point of time, I didn't have fear, so I knew there was nothing to be afraid of. Most people would have been afraid, gotten out of the tent, take off running. I have a lot of experiences like that where they're very playful, like childlike in ways. And so I have a lot of things where, they've come to my car and they've pushed. I told one time telepathically. He goes, "Hey, can I come visit?" And it was a new one that I hadn't built trust with, and I went, "Yeah, sure, just come and hit the car." And I use the words, "Come and hit the car and let me know you're here." And he goes, "Okay." And there's kind of like a smile in my mind as we're talking telepathically. I didn't think about what I said. I said, "Come and hit the car." I didn't say knock on the car. And so I took a nap and I woke up astrally out of my body. I'm very adept at just kind of popping out and going wherever I need to go. I'm astrally outside my body, and he's standing beside my car, probably 10 feet away. And he's smiling, and I go, "Wait a second, I'm sleeping. I know I'm outside of my car." And he gets this big smile on his face. And I go, "Oh God, what are you going to do?" And he just turns, runs into the car shifts and bounces back and forth. And in that moment, my energy, my astral energy snaps into my body because the car is moving and my body's moving. And so I wake up like the wind is being knocked out of me because of that snapback. And I can hear him telepathically and kind of feel him outside with my energy. A lot of it's like feeling them there. And I can feel him laughing. And I'm going, "Why did you hit my car?" And he goes, "You told me if I came to visit, I could hit your car." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, be careful of the words you use." So they're very playful, they're loving. I have a lot of stories like that, in that like light, joyful sense. I also have a lot of experiences where, not negative experiences, but them helping to teach me through fear. Having me sit with them and process collective fear, me having panic attacks, and just enormous, traumatic, almost traumatic experiences of processing the programmed fear within us of them, the fear of, hey, there's something there that we can't necessarily control. And they can be, 9, 10 feet tall sometimes. They're huge, massive. And then the idea of collective fear. One day I was sitting beside one, and he pulled me out of the car and set me down, like literally just reached in the car, set me down after my guys were like, open the door. And I'm like, I'm not opening the door. I could feel him outside of my car. And this is actually Mike, the one I talked about that smacked on the tent. And they're like, open the car door. It's, 1 o'clock in the morning, pitch black at night. There's the moon's out, the stars are out. And I go, I'm too nervous to open the car door. I can feel him right outside. As soon as I unlocked the car and opened it, he pulls the car door open, pulls me out, sets me on the ground. And as I'm sitting there, I just went into a panic attack, just crying, enormous fear, enormous terror running through me. And he sits down right beside me, puts his back against the car and just sits there. And I'm going, I don't know why I'm afraid. I'm not afraid of you. I've talked to you before. You're not harming me. I'm observing. He's literally not doing anything. He's not hurting me. But I'm just panicking and can't breathe and all this stuff. And they told me it was the deep layers of collective fear that I was feeling, that I was having to process and release to be able to experience them more and experience even more of those beings. And so a lot of times when people experience Sasquatches, ETs, other beings in the wilderness, they feel this deep fear and project it onto those beings and go, that being is like evil or bad or malicious. But really it's their own fear projecting onto that experience, not realizing all they're doing is standing there watching you. Or sometimes the Sasquatches will chase you out of the woods if you're doing things that aren't aligned to peaceful living in the woods. They're very protective of the spaces, and so they do chase humans out, but they don't hurt humans. They're like, we chase them. Go away, leave us alone. That said, if you can talk to them, I've had many that I'm just wandering the wilderness. There's one sitting there. They tell me to leave. I start to leave, and then they go, wait, you can hear me? And I go, yeah, I can hear you. And then I had one that started following me, and he started telepathically speaking. He's like, you can hear me? You're not like just ignoring me. I'm like, yeah, I can hear you. We ended up becoming good friends, and I would go visit him down by this river and just go sit there and talk with him. At the same time, other humans that came down, if they were aware, he would probably chase them off because they're not going to be aligned. It's a very heart vibration alignment, love vibration alignment, and in being in a space of a lot of them call it not being a human, being like more natural, more tied to the land, more in your heart, loving and willing to process things like fear and not get into a space where you're projecting the fear onto them, but asking the question, why am I afraid? And they'll help you through it. They help us through healing it and releasing it, and then build friendships. Yeah, tons of stories with them and experiences and other ETs and all kinds of stuff. And they are absolutely not what a lot of people think. Very, very kind, loving, and extremely childlike and playful.
Okay, like I love having you on because like honestly okay, I think this is something I'm learning lately too. So it's such a synchronicity that we're talking about fear against these creatures and these beings that are different than us. And I had a few or many, I don't know, extraterrestrial encounters as well in the other realm though, not in the physical. But I had one recently that I want to consult you on. So I basically heard about, the Galactic Federation, right? I've heard about this for a long time, and I have heard a lot of people say, they're here to help us, and, it's an alliance of these, interdimensional extraterrestrial beings, And then I heard some people say, they're actually quite malicious and they're not necessarily what we think they are. They are actually not here to help us. And I was so confused by that because lately I've been really, really pushed to do more inner work, like not in the sense of I've done a lot of healing and worked a lot with my fear. That's something I'm still, I mean, fear is still makes you feel fear, but I'm actually quite brave to go into the fear. I've done this a lot. I've faced my own demons a lot, so that's not something that will like put me away from something, you know? But I feel like lately I've been pushed even more to work, I mean, to look within more than without, right? And I guess that's a lesson for every human. But so I was like, okay, this is confusing information. I want to know myself, connect with my own heart and connect with them myself consciously so that I can understand if they're actually for us or against us. So what ends up happening is, to keep the story short, is I connect with the Galactic Federation and I get the information that there's both is true, that there are some entities there that actually have, I guess, intentions that are not necessarily always, you know, interested in the best interest of humanity. But at the same time, I got the feeling that most of them are actually very benevolent and are actually here to help us. But sometimes, you know, interference means would go against our free will or would go against us understanding that we hold the power. So sometimes they step back, basically, and, you know, whatever. So, and then I was like, okay, that's interesting, but can I please talk to the most highest frequency being here? And what happens is I get confronted with this like Arcturian being, super high frequency, I think ninth dimension or something that came to mind. And he or she takes my hand and puts it on this book. And as soon as I touch the book, I go from 0 to 1,000, like terror, like panic. And then I realize I immediately go into this healing session, which I'm used to that because I can work with fear and with triggers really well. So immediately I go into the healing and I realize, and the healing was beautiful. It was like it was a womb trauma. So it was me in the womb of my mother and, you know, things that happen in the womb. By the way, for everyone who doesn't know, if you're pregnant and you have a baby in your belly, that baby feels everything you're feeling. So you better know how to release emotions. So yeah, I go through that. I do the healing. And then I realize, wow, it was me being a match. So I had a fear of being controlled, of an outside force being able to have power over me. And that was the womb for me. It represented in this life trauma, but it was also, do you understand, the connection to me? Actually, if I do not clear this fear, it's harder for me to see clearly when I connect with these extraterrestrials, because they're like, you know, you still have some fear around this, like being controlled from the outside. And it was interesting because the you know, Arcturian immediately put me into that memory, I guess, or into that fear and into that trigger. But in the most, see, this is like, it was triggering, but it was beautiful and it helped me a lot to overcome that. But so now I'm wondering still, what are your thoughts on this? Because there are so many, you know, remote viewers that I do really trust and I think they're doing amazing work who are like, nah, those entities are not what you think they are. So do you think they're tricking us? Because my experience was good, but again, what is good, right? It dropped me into a fear for me to resolve it. For me, that's love. But see how that could seem to someone as like something horrible, or, you know, is both true, or I don't know. But what do you think about this?
For me and my experience, I tend to, the first thing I guess to say is I tend to not listen to other channels because I do things from my experience shows me XYZ type of thing, versus being told. And that's one thing I always talk about is your experience is your key to what you're magnetizing and what is around you and what you're aligned to. Also, understanding fear manipulates your perception of an experience, just like you said. Touching the book threw you into fear. And then a lot of people might take that fear and be like, oh, this is bad. This is, you know, not good for me, that type of thing. When it comes to the Galactic Federation, in particular, we actively talk about the Galactic Federation of Light, being very careful when you hear the words of light, because there's polarity in the universe. There's light and dark. Light and dark are not intention. They're aspects of energy and aspects of being. And when something separates itself from the balance of the universe, from the balance of creation, and says it's of light, always be careful of what you're experiencing? Are they using that as a lot of times what we see is of light gets used as a manipulation for people thinking, oh, because it's of light, it's good, and not questioning it. Now, when it comes to a Galactic Federation, I have met Galactic Federation beings perfectly fine. I have met many different federations, groups, collectives. There's not just one, and I don't feel the community speaks on that enough. They go, oh, there's a Galactic Federation. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of groups of beings working, a lot of them in unity to do different things, and all with different intentions, all with different ideas of what's best, all with different experiences and things that they're going to do. With your experience where you said, I just lost track. Where were we going?
Mm.
Oh,
Yeah, my
intention.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah. So with intention, the idea of intention, just because something has benevolent energy does not mean it is of our highest good. That's also another thing to understand. They can be benevolent, they can have a benevolent intention, but it could be like not your highest good experience. One of the experiences I have is I had an ET come, I was transported to a ship, and I woke up on a lab table. And I have a lot of experiences of waking up on different tables and things, but usually with beings I know who are doing like medical check-ins or different things, very normal stuff. And I woke up and I didn't recognize this being. And I looked at him and I was like, what's going on? And he goes, okay, well, I would like to do this thing for you. It's going to help me understand something. And I go, okay, what is it? And he's like, I just want to take a little chunk of your brain. And I go, what? My brain? And he goes, yeah. And now here's the thing. You could feel he was a benevolent being. His intentions were benevolent, but at the same time, through having this conversation, I'm sitting there and I'm going, I don't think this is a good thing. Like, this doesn't sound like a good thing. And then he started telling me what would happen if he did it and all this, and it led to like, well, if I do this, you'll just have random nosebleeds and these other physical symptoms. And I was like, yeah, I'm not letting you do this. Again, his intention, I don't know exactly what he was doing, but I know they were doing some sort of research study to do something benevolent, not of my highest good, but overall their
Yeah.
energy was not, it wasn't malicious energy. It wasn't like, that type of thing, but they needed permission to be able to do the thing. And one of the things I teach, I have a workshop coming up on this, is discernment. This idea of don't take things at face value. You don't get in a car with a stranger just because they feel nice. So you don't just get
Yeah.
on an ET ship because they feel nice. You don't just accept the story they tell you at face value. They can say one sentence and still be in truth frequency, still be benevolent, still be in a heart space, just like he was. And then I knew as I had this conversation, it was a 10-minute conversation of me asking more questions, digging in, like going, I don't think this is necessarily what I want. And just continuing to ask before I just accept them into my space. With the federations and all of that, I describe it like humans. You have however many billion humans at this time on Earth. Most of them are trying to be good, trying to do good, really want to be good in their expression. Not all of them know how to do it. They're not necessarily making the best choices, but that doesn't mean they're bad people. And then you have a very small percentage, like less than 1%, that are actually truly malicious that you have to be careful of. There's very, very few humans you really have to be careful of. And it's the same thing in the universe. you have a lot of beings out there. They're doing different things. They're expressing in different ways. They have different belief systems of how to do things. It's our job to understand when it's aligned to us, when it's not, but also not to vilify them just because they're doing their thing, and we don't understand why. It's it's a lot of discernment, learning that type of thing, and taking your, like you, oh, that's what you said, bringing your power back to you, understanding you have the power to make the choices. So ultimately, if you live in a love centered space, you'll attract beings more aligned to that expression. That doesn't mean they're of your highest good necessarily. You still have to use discernment, but it makes it a lot easier than living in like a fear space. If you live in a fear space, you often attract experiences with beings who know how to manipulate and control that kind of energy of the fear, rather than the higher vibrations that they don't resonate at. Um, so there's a lot going on, but with what I experience, all the beings I've met, I always say, occasionally I run into one where I go, kind of like that one on the ship that I'm like, I'm good. And I got up off the lab table and I'm like, I didn't know where I was going. I was just like, nope, I'm not doing this. He was all confused and kind of upset. And then I woke up back in my car, nothing, nothing had happened. And you also have a divine team. I have an agreement with the galactics and the beings that I work with, Arcturians, Lyrans, all these beings, where if they bring me somebody, I know they're pretty safe. I don't have to do a lot of discernment. But if I'm out in the middle of nowhere or something just appears, use more discernment. Know that, your team didn't bring them, your spiritual team didn't bring them, what we would call your spiritual team. And if that's the case, chances are it's like a stranger. You're out about, you see a stranger, they open the door of a van and they're like, here, get in. It's a 50-50 shot if they're good or bad. You don't know unless you actually ask questions. And most people, we would just say, don't get in a car with a stranger. Like, same thing with ETs and all that. When it comes to communication, make sure you really know who you're working with. But they're not all bad. I think there's a there's a group in the spiritual community that is all about the Galactic Federation, and specifically of light, in that they're all here to help. And then from my experience, a lot of that is it's tricky because it doesn't teach people discernment. It teaches people just accept this. And that's the danger. And that's what I've seen. I've been to places where a lot of these beings exist and are moving around physically and bringing ships in. And I call it Switzerland. Some of these places I've been to, I'm like, they're like Switzerland. Anybody can go, everybody can be there as long as you don't fight together. It's like a neutral zone, this just space of neutrality, all working together, trying to do different things. But some of them definitely aren't on your individual good side, and some of them are 100%. It all comes down to, are you willing to discern for yourself what is aligned to your experience, and obviously say no, bring your power back, and understand you have choice. You have choice in who comes and goes.
Yeah, I think this is so important. I've been on this discernment journey lately because I've gotten so much different, I guess, information. And so I love that we're talking about it because, I think there's such a, when we look at movies and when we look at the predictive programming and like what they want to teach us is so much fear, because the way you feel the fear, you give away your power, you give them the control. Right. So I think this is why we see so many scary alien movies and all these, like, they're taking over, they're going to kill us, So I think the next step from that is actually like the next, I guess, higher frequency energy is actually to go into, no, maybe they're actually all good, which is not true either, but it's a better frequency to be in as a human when you first discover this stuff. And then actually the next step is to be like what we just talked about like, they might be benevolent, they might mean well, but that doesn't necessarily mean they have your best interests in mind. And, because when we look at humans, right, I often tell people, don't be afraid of the spiritual, because are you constantly afraid of the physical? It's the same thing. I think like even, okay, this is an extreme, example, but I hope people can follow. Oh my God, I don't want to be canceled for this, but see, like a serial killer, while he's doing that, is convinced he's doing the right thing. We all think we are doing the right thing at each moment. Otherwise, we wouldn't be doing it. Even if we fight with someone, or if we have an argument, or even if we're mean, we think it's justified in that moment because that person has done this and that to us. So it's quite complex. So I often feel like the more you understand yourself, the more you heal and integrate, and the more you understand your own emotions, the more you will be able to be discerning on the other side as well. But I love what you said with the, chunk of your brain thing, because I had a similar, oh God, this is such a synchronicity. I love it. I don't even have to look at my questions, because, the other day I was actually meditating and I got in contact with this extraterrestrial species that I would call them the tall white, but I don't know if that's just what came to mind because they're similar. I'm not sure. But they actually felt very benevolent as well. And they were like, we can give you this chip that we put in you and it's going to help you. And I was like, what is that? Like, because they need your consent. So I was like, I don't really know what that is. And no, it's going to be helpful for me. I was like, no, I don't feel comfortable with that. So I didn't say yes to that, and I didn't do it. But it's similar to what you just described, which I don't have that intense clarity that you have yet. I'm still on this journey of like remote viewing and understanding. Because for me, I feel like I'm very clear in the moment, but then when I get back into my body, a lot of stuff washes out and the information gets a bit scrambled, and it's difficult for me to hold on to this stuff. But I had the feeling they meant well, but I still didn't feel comfortable with it. So I still said no. So again, this is also a possibility, like an option, right? It's like you decide. This is what, this is what I often like get so passionate about. It's like, in the end, nothing matters, because it's on you to make the decision. It's your life. It's our world. It's Gaia. We are here physically, which means we have more power in the physical than all of these beings, right? So it's on us to decide what we want to do with that information and what we want to do with these experiences. And I wanted to ask you as well. So, okay, you talked about the light. This is a synchronicity, because I have been thinking a lot lately about false light. Again, I'm on this discerning journey. I have heard a lot of teachers lately, which before this I wasn't even a match, I guess, to getting this information. But lately I've heard a lot of teachers talk about, the angelic beings that you're connected to are actually not what you think they are. Same to so now I'm thinking, apparently there's almost like a copy of, how do I say it? Like a spiritual manifestation of the physical, where there's almost like a spiritual war between light and dark, but actually light and dark, and both of these energies, like angels and demons, whatever you want to call them, are actually on the same team to distract us from our own power. And that's actually not, so the angelic beings that people are actually connecting with are actually not really angels. And so this has been interesting for me, because I have worked with angels a lot on my healing journey. Now I'm questioning, what the hell was that? And does that mean that there are no angelic beings that are benevolent on the higher dimension that are actually trying to help? Because, this is so confusing. So tell me your thoughts on this.
So let me touch on a couple of things you mentioned with the fear. One of the examples they gave me that we usually use is sharks. When people go to the beach, they are afraid of sharks. Yet statistically, millions and millions and millions of people can go to that beach and maybe one shark attack happens a year. It's the same with ETs. There's so much out there about negativity that you can meet hundreds and thousands of them and never actually have an issue, never actually have one bite you. They'll come up and they'll nudge you and they'll be curious, but they won't actually engage. The fear is that in anything you watch about sharks, they have Shark Week in America. I don't know if they have that in other countries, but it's like a week of documentaries about sharks. Every one you turn on, the first thing they say is, every year on this beach, 3 people die of shark attacks. What they don't tell you is that beach has millions and millions of people coming and going, interrupting stuff, that statistically it's not that high. You actually have a greater degree of danger getting in a car and driving a car every day than you do of a shark attack, or in the case of extraterrestrials, a really malevolent one showing up. It's like very statistically just not something to be afraid of. Kind of like you said, taking your power back and living in that love, understanding there are bad things out there, but you're going to choose to not worry about them, to not be afraid of them, and align to something better. And then you mentioned the chips. I had them as a kid. I had implants as a kid. And when I woke up to extraterrestrials, I started feeling them more and understanding them more and realized they're not all, there is a, because it's a lack of control. We have a fear of a lack of control. Some of it is soul guided. Like before we incarnate, we work with our, God teams and all that. And we're like, hey, come find us and do this so we can get through our journey and get to a certain space. And when we understand them more, the key with that, you did exactly the right thing. The key with that is understanding exactly what it is, why, how it affects you, all of that. And as I started that journey with the implants, it was like, oh, now it makes sense why this is here. And a lot of them fell away as I rose in vibration. They were there to help me maintain my vibration. Then as I rose, they just kind of dissolved and disappeared because the energy frequency, they could no longer exist in that frequency. I've had that with other clients though, where there's fear. And then when they understand, it's like, it's actually helping them stay grounded or stay, shifting frequencies. But that's the key, understanding it. So what you did is exactly the right thing of going, I don't know what this necessarily is. I don't know that I want it in my field. So no, not at this time. And if they come back and there's a time where you understand it more, then it's like, that's a choice. But that understanding is where a lot of people don't, that's the discernment. They don't go through that process of digging into that. And then with the angels, it's funny because people always ask, they're like, why don't you talk about angels? And I go, I do all the time. The angels you're talking to are extraterrestrials and galactics. The human mind, the biblical Christian lore, has turned them into angelics. Now, there's a difference. There's a caveat here. It's frequency. Angels, what we would describe as like Archangel Michael, that's a very, very high frequency being. And there is a level of frequency that has all of these beings in it that are angelic on an angelic frequency. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean they have our highest good in our thing. You can still be love centered. If they ask, hey, can I do this, and you give them permission, then there's really no, it's like, okay, they gave me permission, I'm allowed to do this now. But the angelic frequencies, when you can see them for who they really are, they don't look like humans. They look very different. They look, the way I call it's like the human versions we see because of the church programming is how we project onto them their energy. When their energy comes to us, we kind of project and we're like, oh, this is what you look like. When in reality, they look like thousands of other different things. Extraterrestrials, they look like gear objects, eyeballs, multiple wings, all this different stuff, versus a lot of the human experience. But you still have to discern with a lot of them. It's less likely that you will experience a true angelic that has harmful intentions, because it is a high frequency, and to maintain that high frequency, you have to really be in truth and love and all of that. But it can also be falsified, because to people who are in a fear frequency, you don't have to be that much higher in frequency to trick them into thinking you're an angel. If they're in like their root chakra frequency, very fearful, very afraid of everything, an ET could show up just looking like a glowing ball of light and be, not super high frequency, but convince somebody they're an angel. So there is a quality of discernment again there of, are you actually talking to a legitimate angelic frequency? That bandwidth exists, that frequency exists, but it's very easy to trick humans. And that's what we've come to, like with talking about the Galactic Federation of Light. a lot of those things are of light because people automatically assume good. But there are a lot of dark entities. And when we say dark, we don't mean, again, light and dark are not intention, they're aspects. Light, we would call like life, abundance, growth. Dark, we would describe as the destruction, the transformation, the things that happen. It's a cycle, life and death. You can't have life without death, and you can't have rebirth and growth without transformation and all of that. So you get a lot of beings who are very focused on that energy that are very dark in nature, who are seen as malicious when people first experience them. And it's not that, it's the internal fear of death, the internal fear of those energies they work with, when a lot of times those beings are far more benevolent than some of the beings people think are of the love light spectrum, because they're confusing and not discerning the experience. They're just saying, well, that one's of light and it makes me feel better, so I'm going to go over here. But they're not actually discerning the situation and saying, why are you here? What are you doing? Understanding the whole experience. It all comes back to that discernment. And even with the angelics, and in understanding too that a lot of the angelics are just extraterrestrials. Some of them came down to, it could be an ET that came down to Earth. A lot of gods and goddesses are this way too. There are gods and goddesses I work with that I feel are ancient extraterrestrial energies, and they came down to Earth at one point, and then people kind of projected a worship mentality, or you're better than me, better than us, and turned them into something greater, which eliminated discernment. It placed the energy there outside of themselves rather than within, and saying, no, we need to really, it doesn't matter if you're an angel or if you're a little tiny goblin, causing trouble in the woods. We're going to discern, and sometimes maybe that little tiny goblin is more aligned to your experience than the angel.
Yeah, I love that, how you describe that, because it really like connects the dots for me, because you are actually channeling me right now, because I have been working with Archangel Michael specifically many times, and his energy specifically is so high, like I'm convinced it is him. But at the same time, it's very peaceful. It's not like bright and makes me want to worship him or in any way. It's just very benevolent, and it's very peaceful, and it's very protective. And I really love working with him specifically because of that. But this connects and, closes the gap for a lot of things I've been thinking about, because I think you're absolutely spot on. It is always, see, and at the same time, I think even if it is a real angelic entity from the, 11th dimension, even then, for them, life and death is an illusion. So what they necessarily think is right might not actually translate to the human experience at all. And you might actually be better off to just ask your friend for advice than an angelic being, because they're on such a different, so I often am like, yeah, it's cool. Like, I love using Archangel Michael for protection sometimes, or for safety, or for, guiding me through specific healing that I need. And then I'm like, thanks. Okay. But it's like, it's not every entity and not every being that you're interacting with is meant for every experience and everything. So, and I love how you mentioned religion there, because I think I'm coming more and more to the conclusion that religion is the ultimate brainwash to keep people small, because I actually think it's such a red flag. Whatever entity it is you're dealing with, whatever ascended master you're channeling, if anything makes you feel less than, immediately red flag. If anything makes you look outside of yourself and makes you feel like, oh, you don't know this thing, I'm going to teach you, or like in a what do you say? Like I'm on a higher horse or whatever kind of thing. Immediately bad. I would say immediately stay away from that energy, and that's exactly what religion does all the time. Trust me, bro. Instead of going like, no, actually, how do you feel about this? It goes so deep though, because even like when we talk about the Anunnaki, it's like, yeah, those are reptilian entities, who did this for their own gain. But at the same time, there are very benevolent Anunnaki who do not agree to the stuff that the other Anunnaki are doing. It's like very complex. And I think once you understand, actually, I think humans are always looking for like the light and the good thing. And like in the end, everything was good. But when we look at these experiences and I think, we meditate and learn this discernment, we realize the issues we have on planet Earth are actually often similar issues that other extraterrestrials are dealing with, like land and, this belongs to us. And no, I think this is better. No, I actually think this is better. Like they have the same kind of similar, I think, conflict that we do. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. The conflict, just to step back, just one piece there that you mentioned was the friendship. The if they try to have you put energy outside of yourself, what I a lot of people look at spirit guides, even just their spirit guides, as like they're better than me type of experience. Like they know more than me. What's my spirit guide say? What does spirit say? All this. And for my experience, I look at them as friends. They're teaching, it's like if you were in a college with a bunch of professors, we're all teaching each other, we're all on the same level. It's just that they have a little bit more awareness of some things that I'm not aware of, and they're helping me remember that awareness. And we have friendships. So, like a lot of the ETs and what we would call spirit guides, it's a an equal footing. Your friends, they're not higher, they're not lower. Those are your real teachers. Those are the ones that trust, because those are the ones that aren't looking for gain or anything of that nature. You were 100% correct. I was literally, they were telling me to begin talking about it and you started talking about it, which was really funny. Um and I was like, yeah, that's perfect. But you were right. Like a lot of them don't understand human experience. So when it comes to the advice that people are getting, and there's discernment in that advice, does that actually apply to the human experience and what we are going through in the moment? A lot of it is very accurate advice, but if you're working a 3D job and you're, in a toxic family and struggling to get out, sometimes when they're like, well, follow your heart, be authentic. It's not just that easy as like jumping up and going and doing that. It takes a little more. And then with the Anunnaki, all of that, 100%, they have their issues. I'm glad you said that, because a lot of people hear that word and they just think, oh, the Anunnaki are bad. I'm like, they're not bad. You have a group of beings, a small sect of them broke off, decided to do some horrible things, and then now we vilify them when in fact a lot of them are actually really good. Same reptilians. There's a lot of reptilian stuff out there that you have a small group of beings that did a lot of bad stuff, and I've met bad ones. I've had a few experiences there, and I've had the majority of experiences are beautiful, loving, balanced type, where they're in a better expression. Even some of my guides in that, we kind of stay away from that particular word. I call some of them saurians, or they have other words depending on like their likenesses and different races and stuff. But specifically that reptilian race, yes, some of them did some bad stuff, but vilifying them, I've physically met some of them moving around the earth that are perfectly harmless, in the sense of trying to right energies that were wronged throughout history. It's this idea of humanity. If we judged humanity on what Hitler did in World War II, it would be the most evil thing in the universe. But that was a very small group of people that did very bad things, created very negative events, histories, all of that. If we judge the whole of humanity, which we can't do, then ETs would look at us and be like, why are we going to work with them? Like, look at what they did in the 40s. And it's like, well, that's not the truth of humanity. A small group broke off, and we can't judge based on that. So it's a great thing that you brought up, and they do have their issues. They have infighting. They have I had a client the other day. She comes to me and she goes, hey, who is this guide that I'm talking to, because they're fighting with my guides. She's hearing them fight with their guides. And I'm like, well, what's wrong with that? And she's like, well, I've just never seen my spirit guides fight with each other. And not in like a fighting, like aggressive type of fighting, but like debating and being like, no, she should do this. No, she should do that. This is better. That is better. And she's like, what is going on? I go, well, keep in mind, not all of them agree on how to guide you. It's like it's like being in college having multiple teachers, sometimes for the same subject, and they all want to teach a different routine, a different lesson, a different method of how to get to some solution. And they're not agreeing and they're trying to figure out which one's best for you. It's not that they're bad. They just don't, they have their own personalities, their own experiences, their own beliefs of what's better. And especially when it comes to society, building society, what's best for the person. That's really why, excuse me, that's really why when it comes down to it, bringing your power back to you and being in your authenticity, where when you talk to ETs and guides, it's less about them giving you information that tells you what to do, and it's more about them giving you suggestions. And they're saying, hey, what if you tried this? What if you did this? I had a guide come to me teaching me about true abundance, the truth of abundant energy and how to work with it. And I started working with him, and I'm like, this is not what the spiritual community teaches. And he goes, no, because it's all manifest. We could get into a conversation on manifestation, but um, it's this thing that people have done a lot of things out of ego and force and in all of this, which isn't really alignment, rather than coming to themselves and then going, what do I want? What is aligned for me? What is helpful for me? Having a bunch of spirit guides that tell you, well, here are a bunch of different options you could take. Which one would help you the most? Which one do you feel you want to take? Where, or they come to you with one solution because they're like, well, we all agree on this one. But yeah, they don't always agree. And when it comes to ETs, I feel like that's going to be a big wake up call for people when they realize kind of what you had said, something like the power being outside of self on them. And there's this mindset in, because of religion and everything, where anything that is more conscious than us has to be good, has to be better. Because look at humans and what they're doing, like they have to be better. It's like, no, that's not the case. There's a lot of disagreement, and that's also why we have factions and we have people that talk about different species and races and the different ways they do things. That doesn't mean they can't work together. A lot of them work together perfectly fine, but they work together in a love center, which means they're not, when they disagree, there's no aggression. When humans disagree, when two countries disagree, there's aggression, there's oppression, there's all this stuff involved. When ET races who are heart centered disagree, they just go, okay, let's sit down and figure this out. And if that's the way you need to do it, then that's the way you're going to have to do it. If this is the way we need to do it, and it'll be okay. We'll still get along at the end of the day. But there's not that like, you have to do it this way. Yet there's still a lot of disagreement. And even down to
Yeah.
the individual, like with that client who, it was just funny. She's like, my spirit guides are fighting. I'm like, yeah, it's normal. It happens.
Yeah, of course it happens. Like, right? So this is the thing, right? It's all, it is so complex. It's not black or white. Even like, for me on my spiritual journey, the thing that has helped me the most was going into my darkness. So for me, I used to have panic attacks. Now I almost never have them. Or, anxiety, almost never. Because I faced that. So the only way out is in, right? So facing that thing that you're so afraid of, which is our own internal world. Most people don't want to sit with themselves for 15 minutes, right? But once we do that, and I do like shamanic soul retrieval. So I go into the trigger, I go into the memory, I feel the emotion. I let myself feel it. Then I validate it. I validate my inner child. I do that stuff. Then I change the scene. I change the past, right? Time is not linear. I do all of that stuff and I come out of it more whole and more being able to discern, but also less afraid of darkness. And I'm still afraid sometimes, yeah, right? Like I'm human. I still get triggered. I still have, things that I'm uncomfortable with or that I don't want to look at. Very normal, right? But much less than I used to. So even now when I think about like let's when we talk about reptilians who have bad intentions, there are reptilians, right, who have absolutely horrible intentions. They're doing horrible things on Earth. But even when I look at them, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of unintegrated shit that's going on there. Similar with like, people who are doing stupid stuff on Earth anyway. So it is very much so I don't like to bypass it though. Like I don't like to go to the highest truth all the time and be like, yeah, all is love. Yeah, that's true. But also on those lower frequencies and lower, dimensions that we're in, it is true that there are people that are trying to harm us and things that are trying to harm us. So I think it is important to kind of keep the balance there, keep the big picture in mind, work on yourself, do the discernment, talk with these beings, but also go back to yourself, even with your guides, right? Like I like my guides, I guess, but I always like to focus more on my own heart, honestly. And
Yeah.
it's just something, I don't know, maybe that's where I'm at right now. But yeah, it's all fascinating and it's so interesting. And I wanted to talk to you as well about fairies. So I don't know, Willow, have you ever been in Ireland?
No, it's funny. I have no calling to go to Europe or Ireland, but I am strongly connected to Celtic lore and that type of realm. And I work, I mean, I see fairies every day. I have some living with me. It's something I talk about for anyone interested. And after this podcast, I talk about it a lot on my Instagram, walking around with dryads and gnomes and goblins and all this other stuff. Um, yeah, it's an interesting thing that people are like, you should go to England or Europe in general, and I'm like, I just don't have a calling to Europe. I have a calling to Asia, Africa, South America, other places, but Europe is kind of like, I don't know. It's one of those. It's just one of those weird things. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I just asked that because, I was in Ireland and I actually was surprised how much it's different from any other country I've been in Europe, because Ireland has this really strong connection to nature, really strong. Like when I look at the collective conscious, like I don't want to say what's it called, like the energy of the land. Right? Like when I look at the energy of the land in Japan, I get this masculine, powerful energy. Like even like Mount Fuji, for me, it's like masculine. It's a masculine, strong, it almost makes you feel humble. That's also why I think Japanese people are influenced by that. This is my own tapping into that. But then in Ireland, I feel this very powerful feminine force of the land. And it's a lot of, again, like the reason I asked you is also because, fairies are a very good, I think, example of the grayness of it all. Because fairies can be very angry and like protective over their land and like they can curse you and fuck you up, but at the same time, they can also be like super like, they just love their land and they love the plants and the trees and the fairy trees in Ireland that are protected by that even the government cannot touch it because they protect it. So it's so fascinating. So can you talk a little bit about fairies specifically? How do they look like? Because I think it's just so interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and with fairies, you're absolutely right. I mean, going back to what you said with the fear and doing your own inner work, when it comes to fairies, ETs, any of it, the more inner work you do on yourself in facing your own darkness, the easier it is to deal with all of those individuals. When it comes to fairies, they are more of an earth frequency. So they're more of a natural frequency. They're prone to emotions. They can get very angry. They can be very sad. They can be afraid. People often think again, hey, they're other beings. They don't have emotions. I'm like, they all have emotions. I've seen all of them. I've seen some of them get very angry. I've seen angels get angry, where it's not like an unwarranted anger. It's a spiritual anger. There's a use of that power, that energy coming through them. But at the same time, when it comes to fairies, there's a lot of lore out there. Be careful with fairies. Don't play with fairies. Don't trust them. All this other stuff. I've never had those issues well, not never, on very rare occasions that I was not using my discernment. That's when I would have an issue. But for the most part, if you respect the land, if you go in and you treat the land well, you come in with love, you show it love, you take care of the trees, the animals, they will absolutely love you. And if you can talk to them, they will be your fiercest protectors. I have several books on my website that I have for free in ebook form. One of them is The Raven's Way. It talks about when I came out to the desert for the first time for 2 to 3 weeks, and I had a group of fairies that had never really talked to humans. There was human activity in the desert area, but they had never really talked to them because nobody was aware, and they were everywhere. And one of them lives with me now. He kind of like came home with me in a sense. And when I was out there, they were so fiercely protective that there were humans projecting negative energy at me that they exactly what you said. They're like, we're gonna go fuck them up. We're gonna go mess with them. They're done. And and I had to get into this space. I have several stories from that journey in that book where I would ask my guides, I would be like, look, I don't want them doing this. They're telling me they're going to go do this thing to these people because they're projecting negative energy. I didn't tell them that. I don't want repercussions energetically. And I had guides teaching me, they're like, remember, fairies will do what fairies want to do. You cannot stop them. It is their choice. And so I had like fierce protective fairy energies that when humans were around that weren't in a love space, they're like, we're going to go do things. Now, the gnomes, I was like, okay, what are you going to go do? The gnomes went and they like stuck sand in the zippers and tied the shoes together. They were talking about doing stuff like that, like things you wouldn't think of as malicious, but they're having a good time. Like, we're going to mess with them. And then I had an experience where about a week later, I was in the mountains in Arkansas in the Ozarks, and I had met a completely different society of fairy, different frequency that were physical to the land, much bigger. They weren't gnomes. They were more like a fairy court in history, like the lore, more like the fairy court style. They were that medieval kind of style of setup. And they, when I pulled in, I saw 3 little boys. They were not boys. They were definitely older, but they looked like little green boys, and they were carrying staffs, and they spoke to each other. 2 of them ran off into the distance, and one of them kind of got the short end of the stick and had to sit there by the camp and watch me. And so he sat on a rock and watched me, and he was all angry because he got left behind. The others got to go back to tell everybody that a human came that could speak to them. And so as I'm sitting there, it was back up. My diet wasn't the best back then. I was eating a lot of candy, and I put candy out for him, and the birds were coming down, and he started getting like happier. And I'm like, okay, and I put some more candy out as the birds were eating, because he's just watching it. He's not messing with it, but bringing the animals in made him happier. And then when the group showed back up, they didn't show back up alone. The 2 boys came back out. There was what I can only describe as, if you've seen Pan's Labyrinth, the being with the horns and the ram horns and stuff, there was like a wizard type energy that came out. There were some other energies, and they spoke to me through the night. But another campsite beside me came in and were super upset that I had picked like the best spot, and they started drinking and started projecting all night to where I could hear them, and we could feel the energy of, that's our spot. We come here every year, all this other stuff. When it was one of those, just pull in, first come, first serve type experiences. And so all night long, we're getting this energy projected at us, and those beings were not happy. And in the morning, I get up, I go down to the river, I talk to the river spirit, and she's like, yeah, they're not happy at all. I get up, and I'm looking at them and I'm like, look, the energy is too intense from these people drinking. I could feel some sort of like explosive energy coming from these people that there was going to be a confrontation. So I just packed up my stuff and left. I'm like, I don't need this. I'm going to go somewhere else. The fairy court beings were like, just as I'm leaving, they're sitting there looking at those people like we are going to mess their day up. At the same time they're looking at me like, we love you, you're awesome, you can come back anytime, come hang out with us, but as soon as you leave, we're going to be doing stuff to them. um so they can be very mercurial, that back and forth in their space. But if you go in with an open heart, they are some of the friendliest, most loving beings in the world. The problem is humans treat them horribly. They destroy the land. I'm in the desert now and they're clearing probably 100 acres. I don't know what they're putting in, but as soon as they started clearing the land, you could feel the sadness of the land. And I instantly started telling them, just come to where I'm at. Just come to where I'm at, because people are just destroying trees, clearing land, not realizing not only are we destroying physical homes of animals, there's also the homes of fae, of beings who are physically here but we can't see, and then the energy beings who are just energies and all this other stuff, this complexity of how the experience is, but it's all being displaced. And when you look at America, the East Coast, typically it's harder to connect with fairies. Out west, it's very easy. The difference is the desert out west, it's not populated. They haven't cleared the land. The East Coast, from the coast to the Mississippi, the first half of America there, it is supposed to be completely, entirely forested from 300 years ago or whenever. It was all forest. Now it's all farmland. All of those states, all farmland. And it's like, yeah, no wonder they're upset. No wonder they're angry and mischievous and all of this. But they're beautiful beings. I've rarely had, just like Sasquatches, I've rarely had issues with them. I had a goblin one time there popping in my head. I was on a trail and a goblin was on a tree stump, and just a small little guy, 6, 7 inches tall. And he's making faces and he's like, "Ugh," sticking out his tongue, laughing at me, not realizing I can see him. So as I'm walking, I'm looking at him and I'm looking at the tree stump, and I finally just go, "I can see you." And he goes, "Oh, what? You can see me?" And completely changed his attitude, his energy, because he thought I was just another human hiking through the woods and he's making fun of me. And then he started following me and talking to me. And he's like, "You can see me. Like, let's have a conversation." A lot of those beings are, the lore is there for a reason. And as somebody, I write fantasy books too from time to time. And the thing I've learned about writing fantasy books, or just writing in general, fear sells. Even when it comes to a news headline, fear sells. The fearful news headline is the one that's going to go viral. That's the same with folklore, with the oral stories they used to tell back in the old days. The fearful stories sell. The story of grandpa sitting on a porch talking to a bunch of gnomes, nobody cares. But the one where they cursed him, where they're, you know, growing mushrooms in his garden instead of letting the plants grow or whatever, those are the stories that sell because they're fearful. And people are like, "Oh, they're malicious." Like, no, just respect the land and they'll be fine. Now that said, there are different beings that require a great deal of respect, a great deal of respect. And what I mean is, I've been in forest areas where I've seen things like ogres, minotaurs, trolls, giants, different dragons, different energies from folklore and mythology, where when they tell you, especially if you can see them, when they tell you, "Don't come in here, we don't want you here," don't go in. You say, "That's fine. You do your thing. I'll stay over here. I'll go my way." Sometimes it because you can talk to them, they'll be like, wait, kind of like what with that Sasquatch I talked about earlier. They'll be like, wait a second, you can hear me, because usually they're projecting energy. They're pushing energy to try and keep people out. And when you say, oh, I can hear you and I'm going to respect you, sometimes they'll follow you or telepathically connect and try to build a connection and be like, wait, you're not a human. You're something else. You're beyond just that 3D human experience. But a lot of them do require that respect, that if you give it to them, they'll become your friends. They'll respect you as well. At the same time, if you don't, sometimes they'll push you down. People talked about being like tripping over things they shouldn't trip over and all that other stuff. Um, just very mercurial beings that they can really be your friend or they can be your enemy. And it's about that balance of, can you build the trust with the land and them and respect them, or do they see you as a threat to that space ultimately?
Yeah, yeah, it's very complex. It's so interesting, that you mentioned dragons as well, because lately I have felt called to the dragon energy, and I think I'm supposed to meditate on them. I haven't done it yet, but I find this so fascinating. And now that we're on this, okay, I want to know, I know the time is a bit, but I wanted to ask you as well on, because I see this like shift in humanity, and I know like everybody's talking about it, but I really feel it lately, intensely. I'm talking like almost everyone is open for this stuff. Like people who you think don't have any spiritual thing inside of them, once you start talking to them, all of a sudden, like, yeah, I actually experienced that too. And people are actually so much more open lately. And I remember in one of your reels on Instagram, you talked about how as a child, for example, or as a younger, when you were a teenager, you didn't feel, they told you basically, the ETs and the beings told you, don't talk about this, it's not safe, but now it is safe. So I feel the same thing. I feel it is much safer to talk about this stuff now. I think that's also one of the reasons I did this podcast now, or started it now, because I feel like the support, or this just more safety, and also I feel more courageous. Do you feel like that's an energy shift? Where do you think it's going with this whole thing?
So it's the kind of just the conscious energy of Earth is rising. And so a lot of people would call it new Earth, but it's not really a new Earth. It's the frequency is rising, shifting, because that's the natural evolution of the Earth. And through that, people are being forced to either shift their awareness or continue struggling through the difficulty in the lower frequency, which will oftentimes eject them into a higher frequency, or they end up leaving the system entirely. Now, when it comes to all this, because it's this graduated effect that started, 2012, the Mayan calendar, all that, that was all about this frequency shift starting to happen. And for me, when I was a kid in the 80s and 90s, 100% told not to talk about it, because they always told me, if you tell your parents, if you tell these people, you'll end up on pills, you'll end up in, the medical system, all this other stuff. So I just innately knew, trust it, don't talk about any of it. Now, when it came to talking about it 5, 6 years ago publicly, I fought with them for a year or two. They kept coming to me and being like, talk about these experiences. I'm like, absolutely not. You told me not to. I'm not going to. I don't feel safe. It still doesn't feel safe. And then we went through a process of figuring out how to create safety and getting myself comfortable. And even back then, it was still a little, just 5 years ago, before the pandemic, it was still not quite as open. With the pandemic, and then with the past year, the frequencies have shifted. The pandemic was a big shift for people, woke a lot of people up. And then over the past couple years into this year, I had some god goddess energies that told me it was going to be this last year that we just had was going to be a real big shift for people. And it's just frequency rising. And as it rises, they have to embrace their truth. A lot of people have experienced things and suppress it because they're afraid to be looked at as crazy. Their family, they don't want their family to know, all of this other stuff. these frequencies force people into that space. It's like you cannot exist on the world if you don't start speaking your truth. If you don't start being in your truth, being authentic, being in those frequencies, it becomes harder and more difficult. So a lot of people are waking up going, wait, I really need to talk about this experience I had, or investigate ETs, or fairies, or energy healing, or dreams, whatever it is. You know, you mentioned shamanic healing. There's shamanic energies and stuff that they come into. Uh, all of this stuff, they go, wait a second, there's more to this world than we think. And then now I think we're also at a precipice too, where science isn't quite there, but we have enough now viral on social media talking about, hey, trees do talk. And they're hooking electrodes up and they're showing trees talking with the signals, going, hey, there is science to trees talking. So now people are like, wait, maybe trees really do talk. Maybe we've been wrong. Or when it comes to fairies and things, the physicists coming out and talking about different dimensions and energy all around us. Some of the science I think is helping people as well, because it's starting to leak out and slowly catch up and say, hey, these people aren't crazy. It's not actively saying the spiritual community isn't crazy. It's just being like, here's some science about this thing. But then we
Yeah.
look at it and we go, that's what we've been saying for thousands of years. Um, so there's that aspect. And then also the aspect of people who live in a vibration that is not love centered. I've been out of this experience for quite a long time, many years. People are seeing us live in frequencies that when a lot of people come to me, they go, you're doing what you want. You're so calm. You're so peaceful. How do I attain that peace, that love, even with everything going on in the world? And they're going, wait, that person can do it. Why can't I? And so a lot of us are leading the way of, whatever it is you want to do, follow that love frequency, that authentic frequency, because that's what gets you out of the loop of fear and negativity and magnetizing more of it, and all of these experiences as they watch the world they live in collapsing around them. Basically, the whole system's burning down slowly. It's a slow fire right now, but that fire's building over time. And people are realizing, hey, through that frequency, that shift in frequency, the earth is rising, which means the truth is coming out. And they're going, we've been lied to, we've been suppressed, all these different things. There really is more to the world. And then it's a question of what aligns for that person. Some people have no interest in the fairies and stuff, but they're aligned to something different in their form of expression and authenticity that they'll find that is still high frequency, still truth to them. It just depends on the person.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And everybody's on a different path, and that's the beauty of it. This is what I also realize now, talking to so many different people on my podcast. This is one of my favorite things, is I learned so much, and I get to sit with you guys, with you and other people who are so inspiring to me, and on the path, but in a different way. And so everybody has a different focus as well, and I think that's part of the mission as well. I mean, you live on the land, you work with these land beings as well, with these, I guess, all of these fae folk, but also, the Sasquatch and stuff. And other people is just, they have a different focus. And, so I think it's really cool to the difference, and none of it is wrong. It's just different. But I wanted to ask you as, well, I do in the last part of my conversations, I do like a rapid fire round. So I'm going to ask you some like short questions, and you have to answer without thinking. But before we do that, now that my audience also knows you more now, and you have talked to so many different species and different beings, ETs and fae folk and so on, what is like one message that you get over and over for humanity?
It's all about the children. We're paving the roads right now. If you imagine rebuilding society, those of us who are leading the way, you with your podcast, me doing this work, we're paving roadways to create a new world. The kids build that world. So for everybody out there that's like, we need to have the new world now, we're building it, but it's a process, and we need the kids to actually build the buildings and the new structures. We're paving the way, saying like, let's level what we have out there and build something new, build roadways, and they can build off of that. That's the number one thing across the board that my friends say is it's all about the children.
Yeah. Yes, it's a process. It's a process. We're going through it. It's not easy, you know. The millennial, I think you're also millennial, like our
Yep.
generation specifically, it's just been like, oh my God, emotional dark ages. Like our parents
Oh
just
yeah.
didn't get it, you know?
Yeah.
They meant well.
100%.
Yeah. Go on, sorry.
Oh no, I was agreeing with you.
Yeah, so you know, it's a lot. It's a lot. We're going through a lot. But yeah, so now to my rapid fire round. What's the first thing that you do every morning?
Every morning,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I mean, look at my phone, probably, as bad as that sounds. Uh,
No, that's real.
Typically, so the bad thing about that part is because I'm so disconnected from society, it's whatever pops into my mind. Um, Typically every morning I just get up, go for a walk, talk to the fairies. There's no ritual, there's no like meditation or affirmation. I mean, the very first thing I do is I roll over, I grab my phone, I check my messages, which I know is not very good neurologically and all that. But primarily it's get myself into a space that I can go for a walk and go talk to the trees. That's probably number one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever seen Earth from above? And what do you think? Is it flat? Is it round? Is it a different shape than people say it is?
That's not a quick question. Um, what I can say is yes. What I would ask people is to stop creating limitations around their experience and to become more observational and to understand that different shapes are different dimensional experiences. So flat, round, and then if you go higher in frequency and understand the earth is a ball of energetic consciousness, it's just like a giant orb, but has different dimensional, spatial things that we could talk about. But ultimately, the number one thing about that debate, flat versus round, it's division. It's rooted in dividing the spiritual community to make them fight with each other and to make them fight science and fight all these other things rather than focusing on love, bringing their power in. And I see a lot of anxiety, a lot of clients come to me, ask me that question, and they have a lot of anxiety around it. And I go, if it's giving you anxiety, then why give it power? Like, does it matter? It doesn't matter if it's flat, round. It doesn't matter what shape the earth is. We still have our experience.
Yeah, and then, you know, people who say, you know, it's a firmament or it depends on the way that you look at it. It's so fascinating. And then inner earth. Oh my God, I wanted to ask you about that, but the time I will have you on again anyways. But my last question is, what does love mean to you?
Uh, wow. Love to me means accepting yourself and everything about you, light, what people might call light and darkness, and everything about others and society and the world and nature with uh full acceptance of allowing them to do whatever they wish to do, allowing them to thrive, never reducing the right of another individual or being to thrive, even yourself. We often look at love from an outside perspective of what are we doing to others, but a lot of people are actually not loving themselves by not making choices that love themselves. It's It is an emotion. There's there's a difference between the emotion of love and the frequency of love. And the frequency of love is more allowing, more, everybody has their space, their right to believe what they want and experience. And if we can bring ourselves to observe that and let them do their thing, then we can do our thing and live without aggression and oppression and all of these other spaces. But ultimately, it comes back to your inner self in allowing yourself to thrive truthfully, authentically, in your expression, whatever that means to you. That's where it all starts.
Yeah, I mean, the older I get, the more I understand that becoming who you really are is the greatest gift. And that's so beautiful. So that's been something I've been on lately too. Thank you so much. Willow, it was
You're welcome.
wonderful to have you on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's a great conversation. Happy to join you again and talk about anything else that comes up.
Absolutely. I can't wait. This was wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, everyone who listened to this. Please consider subscribing, sharing, liking, commenting. I'm still a small channel, so it really, really helps with the algorithm and with YouTube. And, let's ascend together. Let's, evolve. And yeah, see you guys next week. Thank you.